They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But nobody tells you that sometimes the coldest revenge isn't what you do to someone. It's watching them destroy themselves while you build an empire from the ashes of their mistakes. My name is Elena Morrison, and this is the story of how I went from being the backbone of a failing company to becoming the architect of their complete annihilation. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 14th floor conference room like bullets against glass. I sat perfectly still, my fingers hovering over the keyboard of my custom-built laptop, watching the chaos unfold with the detached curiosity of a scientist observing bacteria multiply in a petri dish. The room reeked of desperation masked by expensive cologne and the burnt coffee smell that permeated every tech startup in Austin that thought ping-pong tables made up for incompetent leadership. Across from me stood Tyler Brennan, and if entitlement had a face, it would be his. 29 years old, Harvard MBA that his father paid for, teeth so white they probably glowed in the dark, and a newly minted title that made my stomach turn, Chief Innovation Officer. He'd held the position for exactly 72 hours. In those 3 days, he'd already used the phrase disruptive synergy 14 times, suggested we pivot to NFTs twice, and now he was pointing a titanium Apple Pencil at my screen like it was a weapon. Elena, he said, his voice dripping with the kind of condescension usually reserved for explaining basic concepts to children, I'm looking at this architecture and, honestly, it's overcomplicated. It's bloated. It's exactly the kind of legacy thinking we need to move away from if data flow is going to compete in the modern landscape. Data flow. The real-time analytics platform that I had spent 6 years building from nothing. 6 years of 16-hour days, weekends sacrificed, relationships abandoned, all to create something that actually worked. We processed financial data for Fortune 500 companies. Our system handled billions of transactions daily without breaking a sweat. Banks trusted us with their most sensitive information. And the reason they trusted us was sitting right there on that screen, the Sentinel Protocol, a 3-layered verification system I'd architected that was so secure, so elegant, so perfectly balanced that it had become the industry standard. It's not bloated, Tyler, I said, my voice level, professional. I adjusted my glasses, a nervous habit I'd never been able to break. The Sentinel Protocol is what makes us viable. It's the reason our encryption is unhackable. It's why we can guarantee 99.999% uptime. If you strip that out, we're just another dashboard with pretty graphs. Tyler laughed. It was the kind of laugh that made you want to throw something heavy. 99.999%? Elena, you're living in the past. Users don't care about decimals. They care about speed. They care about sleek. They care about interfaces that don't look like they were designed in a basement. The other engineers around the table, my team, people I'd trained, mentored, protected, stared at their notebooks. Nobody met my eyes. They knew what was coming. I knew what was coming. But knowing doesn't make it hurt less. Tyler moved to the presentation screen that was mirrored from his MacBook. My pulse quickened. He had admin access. Full system privileges. I'd warned Jonathan Brennan, the founder and Tyler's father, that giving his son unrestricted access to our production environment was like handing a toddler a loaded gun. But Jonathan had just smiled that paternal smile and said, he needs to learn, Elena. How else will he understand the business? Here's what we're going to do, Tyler announced, pulling up our GitHub repository. The entire codebase. 6 years of my life displayed in neat folders and files. We're going to streamline. We're going to cut the fat. Starting with this. He highlighted the Sentinel directory. The core of everything. Time seemed to slow down. I could hear my own heartbeat. Tyler, don't touch that repository. If you delete Sentinel, the entire authentication system collapses. Every API call we make, every data validation, every security check, it all runs through that protocol. Exactly, he said, grinning like he'd just solved world hunger. We're overdependent on one bloated module. That's a single point of failure. Basic MBA stuff, Elena. We need to distribute the load. That's not how software architecture works. And that's not how modern leadership works, Tyler interrupted. You're too attached to your code. You can't see the forest for the trees. That's your problem, Elena. You're brilliant, but you're stuck. You're an obstacle to progress. He clicked delete. Then commit. Then push. The screen flickered. Green text scrolled. The repository updated. And, just like that, 6 years of work vanished into the digital void. The silence that followed was absolute. It wasn't just quiet, it was the silence of a building whose foundation just crumbled. Sophie, my lead front-end developer, a 24-year-old genius I'd personally recruited from MIT, looked like she was about to cry. Chin, our DevOps specialist, had his head in his hands. They all understood what had just happened, even if Tyler didn't. "You just deleted the authentication layer," I said quietly. My voice was eerily calm. "Within approximately 12 minutes, every active session will time out. When users try to log back in, there won't be anything to verify their credentials against. The system will lock everyone out, including us." Tyler waved his hand dismissively. "We have backups." "We had backups," Chin said, his voice barely a whisper. "You canceled the S3 retention policy last week to cut costs. Remember? You said cloud storage was wasteful." I watched the color drain from Tyler's face. It was almost beautiful, in a terrible sort of way. But then his expression hardened. He turned to me, and I saw it in his eyes. He was going to make this my fault. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," Tyler said, his voice rising. "You've built this company to be completely dependent on you. You've made yourself indispensable on purpose. That's not team play, Elena. That's sabotage. That's toxic." He pointed at me. "You're fired. Pack your things. I want you out of this building in the next hour." The room erupted. Sophie stood up. "Tyler, you can't." "Sit down, Sophie," Tyler snapped. "Or you can join her." Sophie sat down. They all sat down. I didn't blame them. They had rent to pay, student loans crushing them, families depending on them. Loyalty is a luxury, and in this economy, most people can't afford it. My phone buzzed on the table. It had been buzzing for weeks, a persistent number I'd been ignoring because I was loyal. Loyal to Jonathan, who gave me a chance when I was just another junior developer with big ideas. Loyal to the code I'd built. Loyal to the mission. But loyalty, I was learning, is a one-way street paved with good intentions and broken promises. I picked up my phone. The caller ID read, Apex Dynamics. Apex Dynamics. The venture capital firm that had been trying to recruit me for 8 months. The same firm that was rumored to be launching a competitor platform. The same firm that had offered me a salary 3 times what Dataflow paid, plus equity, plus autonomy. I swiped to answer. I put the phone on speaker. "Elena Morrison," I said, my voice cutting through Tyler's continued rant about fresh perspectives and agile methodologies. The voice that came through was smooth, confident, professional. "Elena, this is Victoria Chin, CTO of Apex Dynamics. We've been trying to reach you for months about our offer. I know you've been loyal to Dataflow, and I respect that. But we're building something revolutionary, and frankly, we need someone of your caliber to make it happen." Tyler had stopped talking. Everyone was staring at me. "What kind of timeline are we talking about?" I asked. "Well," Victoria said, and I could hear the smile in her voice, "we're ready to move immediately. Our Series B funding just closed, $800 million. We have the resources, the team, and the vision. We're just missing the architect. How soon could you start?" I looked at Tyler. His mouth was hanging open. I looked at the screen where my code used to be. I looked at my team, who looked terrified and hopeful in equal measure. "I could start today," I said. My schedule just unexpectedly cleared up. There was a pause on the other end. "Today? Elena, is everything all right?" "Everything is perfect," I said, never breaking eye contact with Tyler. "I just became available. Completely, totally available." "Then let's do this," Victoria said. "Our offices are in the domain. How soon can you get here?" 45 minutes, I said. Traffic permitting. I hung up. I closed my laptop with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot in the silent room. I stood up, unplugged my charger, and wrapped the cord around my hand with deliberate precision. "Good luck with the system reboot, Tyler," I said. "You're going to need it. The cascade failure should start in about 8 minutes. The automated monitoring will try to spin up replacement instances, but since they'll be pulling from the code base you just corrupted, they'll fail too. You'll be stuck in what we call an infinite death spiral. AWS will bill you for thousands of failing instances. And without the Sentinel protocol, you won't be able to manually override anything because the admin authentication will be gone too. I walked toward the door. Tyler's voice cracked behind me. You sabotaged us. You built a time bomb. I turned back. No, Tyler. I built a cathedral. You just took a wrecking ball to the load-bearing walls and blamed the architect when the roof caved in. I walked out. The elevator ride down felt like ascending to heaven. Each floor that passed was a layer of stress peeling away. By the time I reached the lobby, I felt lighter than I had in years. The walk to my car was surreal. The Austin sun was brutal, turning the parking lot asphalt into a shimmering lake of heat. I threw my laptop bag into my Tesla, a gift to myself after our last funding round, and just sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, breathing. My phone exploded with notifications. Slack messages. The company channel I hadn't been removed from yet. Chin, Elena, the monitoring systems are throwing critical alerts. Every endpoint is timing out. Sophie, Tyler is screaming at IT. He's demanding they restore from backup. Someone just told him about the S3 cancellation. Dev channel, error 401, unauthorized flooding the logs. We've lost admin access. Chin, AWS bill is climbing. We're at $47,000 in the last 3 minutes from autoscaling failures. I didn't respond. I just deleted the Slack app from my phone. That chapter was closed. I drove to the domain, Austin's gleaming tech corridor, with the windows down and music blasting. When I pulled up to the Apex Dynamics building, it took my breath away. It wasn't just an office building, it was a statement. Glass and steel rising 40 stories, with the Apex logo etched in gold on the entrance. This wasn't a startup scraping by. This was a war machine. The lobby receptionist was expecting me. Ms. Morrison, Ms. Chin is waiting for you on the executive floor. Take the express elevator to 40. The elevator was faster than thought. My ears popped. When the doors opened, I stepped into a world that made data flow look like a college dorm room. This was clean lines, natural light, and the kind of expensive minimalism that screamed unlimited budget. Victoria Chin was waiting. She was in her early 40s, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit, her hair pulled back in a way that meant business. When she shook my hand, her grip was firm. "Elena," she said. "I have to admit, when you said your schedule cleared up, I was hoping it was good news for us. But your timing is impeccable. Come with me." She led me to a corner office with a view that overlooked the entire city. On the massive desk was a folder. "Let me be direct," Victoria said, sitting across from me. "We've been watching Dataflow for 2 years. We know their tech is good because we know you built it. We've been waiting for the right moment to make our move. The question is, are you ready to build something that doesn't just compete with Dataflow, but completely replaces it? What are you offering?" I asked. She slid the folder across. "Chief Architect position. 400,000 base salary. 5% equity in Apex Analytics. That's our new division. Unlimited budget for your team. Complete technical autonomy. And here's the best part," she smiled. "We're launching in 6 months, directly targeting every single one of Dataflow's clients." I opened the folder. The contract was more generous than I'd imagined. But it was the project spec that made my heart race. They wanted to build exactly what I'd always dreamed of building, freed from the constraints of penny pinching and founder politics. "There's one condition," Victoria said. "We need you to bring people with you. Engineers who know the industry, who know what real excellence looks like." "I know exactly who I'd want," I said. "But they're still at Dataflow." "Not for long. They won't be," Victoria said. "Once word gets out about what happened today, they'll be looking for exits. You just need to open the door." I thought about Sophie, about Chen, about the others who'd been too scared to stand up for me. But I also remembered every late night we'd worked together, every problem we'd solved, every victory we'd celebrated. "I'll reach out to them," I said. "After the dust settles." "Perfect." Victoria extended her hand again. "Welcome to Apex, Elena. Let's build something that changes the game." I shook her hand. And for the first time in 6 years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. That night, from the comfort of my new office, an office with a door that locked, With a window that didn't face a brick wall, I watched the carnage unfold in real time. Sophie had kept me in a private Signal chat, sending updates like a war correspondent from the front lines. 6:47 p.m. The entire platform is down. Every client is locked out. Support is getting destroyed. 7:15 p.m. Tyler tried to manually restore the database. He doesn't have the encryption keys. Everything is locked. 8:03 p.m. Jonathan just arrived. I've never seen him this angry. He's purple. Tyler is crying in his office. 9:24 p.m. Emergency board meeting called. They're talking about the pending contracts. Pinnacle Bank was supposed to sign tomorrow. $3 million annual contract. They're walking. I should have felt guilty. I should have felt something other than the cold satisfaction that settled in my chest like ice. But I didn't. They'd made their choice. They'd chosen ego over expertise, nepotism over merit. Now they were learning a lesson that every engineer knows by heart: respect the code, or the code will destroy you. My personal phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Elena, it's Jonathan Brennan. His voice was different. Smaller. Desperate. Jonathan, I said neutrally. Elena, I need you to come back. Tyler made a mistake. A terrible mistake. Whatever you want, double salary, equity, CTO position, it's yours. Please. We're dying here. I looked out my window at the Austin skyline, glittering like a circuit board come to life. Jonathan, I appreciate the call. But I've accepted another position. Apex, he said bitterly. You went to Apex. I went where I'm valued, I corrected. You had 6 years to show me I mattered. Instead, you let your son delete 6 years of my work and fire me in the same breath. That's not a mistake, Jonathan. That's a choice. Elena, please. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice hardening. The Sentinel protocol can't be rebuilt quickly. It took me 3 years to develop the encryption layers. You'll spend months trying to reverse engineer it from fragments, if you even can. In the meantime, every client contract you have will expire or terminate due to service failure. And you know where those clients will go? Silence. They'll come to Apex, I continued. Because in 6 months, we're launching a platform that does everything Dataflow does, only better. Faster. More secure. And it'll be built by the person who actually understood what she was building. This is revenge, Jonathan whispered. No, I said. This is consequence. Goodbye, Jonathan. I hung up. The next 3 weeks were a blur of 16-hour days, but they felt different. Energizing instead of draining. I was building without compromise, without someone second-guessing every architectural decision, without being undermined. Sophie was the first to reach out. Then Chin. Then 3 others from my old team. One by one, they applied to Apex. One by one, I hired them. We weren't just building a team, we were building a family of people who'd been through war together. The development process was poetry. We used cutting-edge frameworks I'd only dreamed about at Dataflow. We had security consultants on retainer. We had hardware that didn't require 3 approval signatures to upgrade. And most importantly, we had leadership that understood one fundamental truth: trust your engineers or find new ones. The platform we built wasn't just better than Dataflow. It was a masterpiece. We called it Nexus Prime. The architecture was revolutionary, a distributed verification system that was 3 times faster than Sentinel and twice as secure. We stress-tested it against every attack vector imaginable. We brought in white-hat hackers who tried for weeks to breach it. Nothing worked. But the real genius wasn't in the code, it was in the business strategy. Victoria had identified every single weakness in Dataflow's client relationships. Every contract that was up for renewal. Every pain point that clients had complained about. We built Nexus Prime to solve those exact problems. For months in, we got our first major client, Pinnacle Bank. The same $3 million contract that Dataflow lost. The CEO of Pinnacle personally called to thank me. We heard you were behind this, he said. That's the only reason we're here. Then came Meridian Financial. Then Cascade Insurance. Then Global Trust Holdings. One by one, Dataflow's clients jumped ship. And they didn't just jump, they brought their data, their referrals, their testimonials. The tech blogs started noticing. Apex Dynamics disrupts analytics space with military-grade security. Former Dataflow architect builds platform that makes competition obsolete. How one engineer's vision is reshaping financial data. My face was on magazine covers. Conference organizers begged me to speak. Venture capital firms that had ignored Dataflow for years were suddenly throwing money at Apex. And through it all, I kept building. Month 5, I got a text from Sophie. "You need to see this." She sent a link. It was a SEC filing. Dataflow was seeking emergency funding. They were weeks away from bankruptcy. The filing detailed everything: the technical failure, the client exodus, the lawsuits from companies whose data had been compromised during the outage. And buried in page 14 was a single paragraph: the departure of former chief engineer Elena Morrison, who was terminated during a restructuring initiative, precipitated a cascade of technical and operational failures from which the company has been unable to recover. They'd finally admitted it. In legal documents that would be public record forever, they'd admitted that firing me was the beginning of their end. I should have felt vindicated. I should have celebrated. Instead, I just felt empty. That weekend, I was debugging a tricky latency issue when my phone rang. It was a number I hadn't seen in years. "Hello, Elena. It's Tyler." I almost hung up, but curiosity won. "What do you want, Tyler?" His voice cracked. "I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. You were right. About all of it. I destroyed something I didn't understand because I was too arrogant to listen. And I've spent every day since trying to fix what I broke." "How's that going?" I asked, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. "It's not. We're done. Dad's selling what's left to a liquidation firm. I'm out of tech. Nobody will hire me. You Google my name, and the first thing that comes up is the developer who deleted his own company." I said nothing. "I know you have no reason to forgive me," Tyler continued. "I'm not asking for that. I just needed you to know that I understand now. What you built wasn't bloated. It was brilliant. And I was too stupid to see it." "Tyler," I said quietly, "the worst part wasn't that you deleted my code. The worst part was that you never respected it enough to understand it first. You saw something you didn't comprehend and assumed it was worthless. That's not just bad engineering. That's bad humanity." "I know. Good luck with whatever you do next," I said. Genuinely. "But we're done here." I hung up before he could respond. The launch of Nexus Prime happened on a Tuesday. Victoria insisted on a huge event: press, clients, investors, the works. But I insisted on starting the same way I always started important projects, quietly, at 2 a.m., with just my core team. We gathered in the Apex Command Center. Floor-to-ceiling screens showing system metrics, server loads, traffic patterns. Sophie manned the front-end analytics. Chin monitored the infrastructure. I sat at the central console, my fingers on the keyboard, ready to kill everything if something went wrong. "Ready?" I asked. They nodded. "Execute primary deployment," I said. Chin pressed enter. Code flowed across the screens. Servers spun up. Load balancers distributed traffic. Authentication systems verified millions of existing credentials we'd migrated. And then, nothing. No errors. No crashes. No desperate scrambling. "Traffic incoming," Sophie announced. "First client data syncing. Latency at 4 milliseconds. Elena, it's perfect. Database replication stable," Chin added. "All clusters green. Failover systems ready but idle." I watched the numbers climb. 10 transactions per second. 100. 1,000. 10,000. The system didn't even strain. It was designed for this. Built for this. "We're live," I said softly. The team erupted in cheers. But I just sat there, watching the data flow, watching the culmination of everything I'd worked for, everything I'd lost, everything I'd rebuilt. 6 hours later, the official launch event started. The ballroom was packed with press, clients, competitors trying to figure out how we'd pulled this off. Victoria gave the opening remarks, but then she did something unexpected. "But the real story," Victoria said, "isn't about Apex Dynamics. It's about vision, resilience, and the courage to rebuild when everything falls apart. Please welcome our chief architect, the mind behind Nexus Prime, Elena Morrison. The applause was thunderous. I walked on stage, and for a moment, I was terrified. But then I looked out at the crowd and saw Sophie, Chin, and the others in the front row, grinning like proud parents. I took the microphone. 2 years ago, I was fired for trying to prevent a disaster. Today, I'm standing here because that disaster happened exactly as I predicted. This isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about what happens when you respect the work, trust the process, and refuse to let other people's limitations define your potential. The room was silent, hanging on every word. Nexus Prime isn't just a platform, I continued. It's proof that when you build something with integrity, when you refuse to cut corners or compromise on quality, when you surround yourself with people who share that vision, you don't just survive. You revolutionize. More applause. Camera flashes. But I wasn't done. To anyone out there who's been underestimated, undermined, or undervalued, your time is coming. Build something so good they can't ignore it. Build something so solid they can't break it. And when they try to tear you down, let the work speak for itself. The applause was deafening. That night, after all the celebrations, I returned to my office. The city lights sparkled below. My phone buzzed with congratulations from around the world. But there was one message that caught my attention. From Jonathan Brennan, "Congratulations on the launch. You built something extraordinary. I'm sorry I couldn't see it when it mattered. The company is officially dissolved as of today. I hope you can forgive an old fool who let his pride destroy his legacy." I stared at the message for a long time. I thought about typing something cutting, something that would drive the knife deeper. But then I realized he was already living with the consequences. Every day for the rest of his life, he'd know that he had the next unicorn in his hands, and he let his son throw it away. I deleted the message without responding. 3 months post-launch, Nexus Prime had captured 40% of the financial analytics market. Our valuation hit $2 billion. Apex Dynamics went public, and my 5% equity stake made me wealthier than I'd ever imagined. But the money wasn't the point. The point was standing in my lab at 2 a.m. with my team, solving impossible problems, pushing boundaries, creating something that mattered. Sophie became our VP of Product. Chin became our Director of Infrastructure. The others who'd followed me all became leaders in their own right. We built a culture where code was respected, expertise was valued, and nobody got to delete things they didn't understand. The tech industry is small, and word travels fast. I started getting calls from other companies, other engineers who'd been burned by incompetent leadership. They all asked the same question: "How did you do it?" And I always gave them the same answer: build something they can't live without. Then make sure they know who built it. 5 years after my firing, I was invited to speak at TechCrunch Disrupt, the biggest stage in tech. The topic they asked me to address: building resilient systems in the age of disruption. I stood on that stage, looking out at 10,000 people, and I told them the truth. The most resilient system isn't code, I said. It's you. Your knowledge. Your expertise. Your refusal to compromise. When someone tries to delete your work, your value doesn't disappear. It just finds a new home. And sometimes, that new home becomes an empire. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Backstage, a young developer approached me. She looked nervous, clutching a laptop covered in stickers. "Ms. Morrison," she said, "I was just fired today. My CTO said my code was too complicated. Said I was being difficult. I don't know what to do." I looked at her and I saw myself 7 years ago. "What's your specialty?" I asked. "Machine learning optimization. I built a system that reduced model training time by 70%, but they said it was over-engineered." I pulled out a business card. "Send me your portfolio. Apex is always looking for people who build things that actually work." Her eyes went wide. "Really?" "Really," I said. "But let me tell you something important. This feeling you have right now, the anger, the betrayal, the fear, don't let it make you bitter. Let it make you better. Let it fuel you to build something so extraordinary that they'll spend years regretting they let you go." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Thank you." As she walked away, I realized that this was the real victory. Not destroying data flow. Not building Nexus Prime. Not the money or the accolades. The real victory was becoming the person I needed when I was at my lowest. I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app. I'd been keeping a running document of lessons learned, things I'd tell my younger self. I added one more. They can fire you. They can delete your code. They can try to erase your contribution. But they can't unlearn the lessons you taught them. And they can't stop you from building something better. The conference continued around me, but I stood there for a moment, looking at that note, feeling the weight of everything I'd overcome. Then I smiled. Because the best revenge isn't destruction. It's creation. It's building something so remarkable that everyone who doubted you has to live in the shadow of what they lost. Data flow was gone. Tyler was gone. That version of myself that tolerated disrespect was gone. But I was still here. Still building. Still proving that expertise matters, that quality matters, that the people who actually do the work are the ones who create the future. And I wasn't done yet. Not even close. Yendi.